You've heard about the horrors of the apartheid system in South Africa. You've heard about the way the terrible white minority stole the land from the noble savage. You've heard of the thousands of needless black deaths in that country. You've definitely heard about St. Nelson Mandela and his travails while trying to free his people from abject poverty. Well, this program and my South African guests are ready, willing, and able to tell you the truth about South Africa, which the media has deliberately hidden from you. We will dispel all the myths and lies you've been fed and leave you with the bare facts. Welcome to Radio Free South Africa. This is your host, Karin Smith. Our guest today is Francois Klutter, Treasurer of Front National. Front National has had an epic week, and I thought this was the perfect time for them to give us a first-hand account of what they have been doing. Welcome, Francois.
Thanks, Karin, and thanks for the listeners listening tonight.
Francois, it's always such a pleasure to have you on the show. Front National has done the most amazing things this week, and it's nice to see that people are actually standing up in South Africa. But before we begin with that, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yeah, like you said, my name is Francois Klutter. I'm Front National's National Treasurer and South African spokesperson. And I've been in politics for about 6 years. When I was 20 years old at the University of Pretoria when I went into youth politics. And I've got a bit of a political degree myself, where my great-grandfather was one of the National Party stalwarts of 1948. And grandmother was also MP, and my dad was a Conservative Party member and also in Front National now.
Wow, Francois, that's quite a pedigree you've got there.
Yes, yeah, some of the longest one than some of these revolutionist politicians that we have in South Africa now.
Who really don't have a history, but, Francois, no matter whether you do have the pedigree or not, anybody who is prepared to stand up and fight for the whites in South Africa has got my backing, because there's only a handful of people willing to get out from behind their keyboards and go to the streets and do something.
Yes, of course. No, precisely that's my point. And I was one to go and stand forward and take the punches for the people, of my people. So if more and more people can do that, then we will be a bit broader base that we can give the punches out back to the communists and our baddies out there that want to destroy the white people here in South Africa.
Absolutely, because you people have been taking punches for way too long now. Francois, what is Front National? Because Americans don't get any news out of South Africa, so they wouldn't have the faintest clue what you are and what you stand for.
Front National is a separatist party or a self-determination party for European South Africans to determine themselves in their own country again. And we are more of a nationalist conservative party, more like the old Conservative Party and National Party in its beginning days, and more probably to like the Americans party, between the Tea Party and the Constitutional Party that they have in the United States.
Absolutely, because in South Africa, the whites do not have a political voice at all, do they?
No, and if there is some voices, they have drastically changed over the last 2 years, that they have been more shifting to the left because of the political ideas that they have to. That is not propagated properly by them, and now they're moving more left just to secure their votes and secure their seats and their own salaries. But we are a more direct approach. If we don't get any salaries regarding our politics that we drive here in South Africa, and so we are doing it for a goodwill of the case and not for our own pockets.
Absolutely. So Francois, what I see is that you are likely to be accused of wanting to return to apartheid. So could we go there and explain why apartheid was not what it is made out to be? It is not apart hate. It was a form of segregation, which was really a matter of self-defense. But people in the world do not understand that.
Yeah, I think the broader definition of apartheid, if you can go and look into a more exact definition, if how the system was made, it's where one group probably have the whole political power, but it segregated itself just in defense. But all of these homelands of the African tribes have been they have full political power over their own affairs. They have their self-determination back then, but it wasn't enough for the world. They said it was racist and a bad system, but probably because the white people had more or less more power. But we are propagating now that we don't want the apartheid type of system, but we just want to rule over the Europeans' affairs here in South Africa, not all of the other tribes. They can do their own thing. I don't want any more power regarding them.
No, absolutely, Francois. So what Front National is actually standing for is saying that we as a white nation cannot integrate or live alongside these black tribes, which after 400 years of white rule and exposure to Western ways, they are still African. And their way of doing things, their way of worshipping, their way of understanding life will never be the same as ours.
No, of course. I think I've become more African than themselves because they are losing identity more and more by themselves, so that we are losing our identity. And the problem is that we are beginning to root ourselves more and more as Africans and starting to lose our European identity because we are starting to fully develop as an own tribe here in Africa. We can't say we are still Europeans, but our forefathers were Europeans, of course, but I think the problem is with the African, they think they're African, but they're starting to lose total the plot regarding their own identity because the white people in South Africa have more a broad sense of who and what they are because we are born from this land, we are bleeding from this land, we are living on this land because we said Africa is our home, but I think the African tribes are starting to lose the whole plot regarding their own identity. Luckily for us, we still have that after 20 years of the so-called democracy in South Africa.
Yes, I found that. And given the influx of African refugees into Europe right now, the world is beginning to see it more and more, that these people they want the Western things, but they do not want the Western culture, the Western religion, the Western laws. They want to convert other countries into their way of thinking. They have no will to integrate or become a part of any other country. And I think that we see that particularly in South Africa, that since 1994, when we were cheated, literally cheated and lied into giving the country over to the ANC, we have become outsiders in our own country.
Yeah, precisely because now I have to fight again. I was born in 1989. I was 5 years old when the first democratic elections took place, and in '92 the crucial referendum that of the yes and no vote, should we go to a new constitutional democracy or not? And so I was 3 years old when that referendum took place. So I have no place that I can say that I don't know anything else than the new South Africa. And this South Africa is not for white people at all because we are being discriminated against more laws now than there was ever before discriminated against black or colored people in the apartheid system. So the new South Africa is a more of a hatred place than ever before in its history of regarding who was in charge. And me as a youngster can't get through the quota system here that was put down in the university system where a number of black people should be allowed into certain degrees. And where in the world did you ever see that a quota system should be applied where 80% of the population is black Africans and only a small minority of 8% of white people has been discriminated against just to took them out of the system? It's probably should be other way around, but in South Africa, the black people is more scared of the white people's probably their knowledge or a skill, or I don't know why they think they are inferior to us.
Yes, I've read a lot of articles recently by Black people who have said that there is still white supremacy in South Africa, and that the Black has been made to be ashamed of who he is. Now, for me, as you have just said, if you have an 80% Black majority, how is it possible that you need to create laws to protect yourself from an 8 or less percent minority? It is just the most ridiculous situation. And yet no news of this reaches the outside world. None of it.
Yeah, if I can maybe explain to the viewers out there what types of discrimination laws that is against, particularly written against white people in South Africa, is that in the workplace we have something called Black economic empowerment and affirmative action, where certain types of jobs is just put there for Black people, and a certain point system is also out there when you tender for a contract at a certain government or companies, that you have to have a certain point system. The more Black people you employ in your system and more Black people you educate, the more points you get. So most companies in South Africa, just to get tenders, they have to employ more and more unskilled Black people just to get a contract, but the contract is in a wasteful state that it cannot be properly done for. And so it's this types of systems that's put in there that it makes the economic also suffer at the moment, just not our political situation, but the whole economic situation. And in a more broader sense, that the quota system is other thing that is also a discrimination law in the university system. But like I told before, there's in certain degrees that put this quota system, so many Black people should be allowed, and only a few number of white people should be allowed. And even in our national sports teams that we have, a certain number of Black people have to be included into our sport teams, but they have the nice word is that they call transformation. So, but it is, transformation is just a political correctness word just to fool the outside world out there.
Yes, because, okay, so you've given this explanation, but for me, still, as somebody outside of South Africa, you could never understand that 80% of your company has to be Black, 80% of your university has to be Black, 80% of your suppliers have to be Black in order to comply with the BBEE laws. So it doesn't matter how qualified a white person is. In fact, recently there have been adverts saying no white people need apply. I mean, it's become so blatant now.
Yeah, no, of course. And now there is been court cases now at the Constitutional Court just to try and reverse those types of adverts. But the thing is, if you don't have political power, you can't do nothing about it. And that's the whole problem here in South Africa. We are a small minority with no political power at all. So we are in the hands of the Black majority of the 80% to make the rules, and we are suffering regarding that. And the world do not see that type of explanation that we give them usually, that said, how can an 8% minority even have any influence in the country system of saying, yeah, well, this is wrong? But if the majority decides, it's what the majority decides, and the outside world do not understand completely that. They say, no, but you have to show yourself and go into debate and dialogue and etc. But if you can go into dialogue the whole day long, but if they decided, they have decided. So that's the problem that we have. And so without any political power, you're screwed.
Yes, and apart from that, front row, even dialogue. You can't enter into a dialogue with people who will not speak to you. You can
no, of course,
as much as you want, but if they will not reciprocate and speak with you, there is no opportunity for dialogue.
Usually when you go into dialogue with them, they're open to talks, but they put the talk into a certain direction that you are, again, the perpetrator for bringing up certain things, and you are a bad one again. And so they usually do not come anything of these dialogues with these types of groups. So usually if you have no claim regarding anything, you cannot go into in a winning situation. So at the moment, luckily, laws is on our side that we can say that the international laws on our side regarding our self-determination plight. So that's the only thing that is on our side that they can't do anything about. So they signed the international resolutions at the United Nations.
But, Francois, have they not made it perfectly clear in the last few months that they have no idea whatsoever of adhering to international laws, because they're already trying to withdraw from the International Criminal Court? They stand up against anything that the whites try and do, because a Transvaal Agricultural Union was at the United Nations this week, and as usual, the ANC stood up and tried to get them thrown out. The amazing thing was that the Americans stood up and said, we want to hear your story. But that is the first time that I know of that any country has stood against the ANC.
Yes, and now on that note, there was over a al-Bashir case of Sudan that should have been charged with his genocidal charges at the International Criminal Court here in South Africa, but we released him on a plane to get out of the country before he can be charged on these criminal charges against humanity. So now there's a debate between the ANC ruling party and the government itself. So it's actually a struggle between themselves regarding these international resolutions, because some of them said we should stay and some of them said we should leave. So there's an internal struggle inside the ANC regarding this now, because if they leave, they will probably have a lot of flack around it, and it will have economic problems for South Africa. So the economic stalwarts in the ANC is currently tried to block this decision, but the more communist element in the African National Congress wants to get out, because they are scared of genocidal charges against them and a lot more other charges that should be against them. So there is currently the decisions are upheld at the moment. So we're still in the preferable position to claim our resolution laws that was signed. So we are on the safe side now for 2 years now still.
Okay, so that then leads into this being a very busy week for Front National, and you in particular, because you at the forefront of both of these things. Could you tell us the lead up to what happened on Wednesday, and then we'll discuss the march on Friday?
Okay, on Wednesday we went to the Tshwane municipality in Gauteng province. The Tshwane municipality used to be the old Pretoria municipality before it changed its name. We went to the mayor of the city council and had a letter of intention that we will use next year's municipal elections to claim internal self-determination if we win some of the constituencies and make them new municipalities with Afrikaner-ruled leaders inside of them, because we will be targeting constituencies that is more of a broader white supporters base, and we will consolidate them all into new municipalities that we can deliver useful services to the people out there, not these types of services that we get at the moment from the electricity suppliers and the water supply here in South Africa. So, and we handed the same intention letter to the Premier of the Gauteng province, or you in the United States will probably know it, a governor in the states of the United States. So we have made 2 intentions regarding that.
Okay, and how did they receive this, Francois?
The Tshwane municipality was rather open regarding our letter of intention. Even the mayor the next day in the city council meeting, he made notice of that he's one of the ANC leaders that said that all cultural groups in South Africa should live out their culture freely. So he's half in support of our action that we want to do this, because he feels that the constitution was put in place there for a reason, and that we can use the constitution to enact our intentions. So, and even in our South African constitution, it states in section 235 that self-determination can be claimed by cultural groups in South Africa if they show the necessary support for it.
Ah, I've never understood that you had to have the necessary support. So on paper, certainly you have the support, but I don't know about people actually standing up and making their voices heard, because white South Africans are very law-abiding and very quiet people. They don't make a noise. They don't want to fight. They don't want to do anything except live their lives. But I do think that the time is right for self-determination to be claimed. And given the fact that so many of the Black tribes are living that exact lifestyle, they are ruled by their own king or their own chiefs who get a salary from the taxpayer. So why is it okay for them but not okay for the white people?
Yeah, that's currently the problem. We also can have a claim that we want a Boer king or English king or a Portuguese king here in South Africa. That actually, but we have no norm of African tradition. So we said we are democratic type of people that we want to elect our own leader. So we want our system to be used. So that's why we send these types of letters to the government to say that's our intention, and if we get the necessary support, we will claim our self-determination. So, but there's also currently a group here in South Africa that of legal people that try to make the section of 235 of self-determination in the South African Constitution more broader, that it can be more specified, that we can rather claim it much easier, because currently there's still a bit of dark points inside of that clause, but currently we still can claim our self-determination if we have the necessary support.
So do they actually tell you how much support you need? In other words, you're such a small minority. Would the white people be enough to claim that, or would you have to have more of an impact? Because everything in South Africa goes on numbers. So are they then saying that you would need Black support as well, or would just 50% of the whites be enough to support it?
What actually should happen, if you go to the constituency of in one of the municipalities, let's for argument's sake, usually the wards is about 15,000 people. If I have the support of 7,500 plus one, I have the necessary support of that constituency to make it a new municipality. So that's the only type of support I need. If I have the support of certain constituencies, I can consolidate them into new municipalities as self-determination regions. So if I have the 50 plus one over there, and I can win the constituency, then I can consolidate them into self-determination wards. I don't need the whole spectrum of white people in South Africa to support self-determination. I only need that types of constituency to support me at current moment.
And so that is why you're targeting the Pretoria area, because there are more white Afrikaans areas there.
Currently, according to numbers, there's about 500,000 white people just living in Pretoria. So, it's about 20% of the whole population in South Africa. So Pretoria is one of the target markets. But every constituency where white people is in the majority, we will be targeting them, especially because I won't be targeting a Black constituency. I have no business there, so they can do their own self-determination if they want.
I know, absolutely, Francois. I agree with you. There's no use including them because they don't want us anyway. They keep telling you, get out, bring me my machine gun to shoot you, go back to Europe. If you don't like the crime, you can leave. I mean, that is the entire political class's answer to your problems. So, all right, so then tell us about Friday's march.
Yeah, on Friday, we have a march regarding if I can explain it like that, the national memorandum that we handed over regarding self-determination on a broader scale of independence, like statehood or autonomous province or an independent country, because there is some sections that we can claim that on a national basis that we have the necessary support in certain areas that we can consolidate them as well and make it into a new province or a new state, new federal state in South Africa. So that was the more on a national basis that we want to claim for the whole of the population of the European settlement here in South Africa.
Now, Francois, one of my pet peeves, does this include English-speaking South Africans?
Everyone that can comply with the Western civilization way of life, it is included, and usually all of the European people is Western civilization people. So yes, of course, English people is included.
I ask you that because this week there has been 2 or 3 articles about how it's time for the Afrikaner to separate himself totally from the English speaking. Now, for me, that is national suicide, because though the Afrikaners are the biggest portion of white people in South Africa, they are still a very, very small minority. And if they then exclude everybody else except Afrikaans-speaking people, you are going to become totally unimportant because there won't be enough of you to do anything. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a form of a party suicide to try and do that. And it doesn't make any sense because the international language of business is English.
Yes, of course. And I'm for one that white people is being discriminated on the same level. So I can't exclude anyone because myself is a white man and I want to preserve the white nation here in South Africa. So I have to include them all. So that goes for the Portuguese community and the Greek community in South Africa as well. So so we have to include them all because we can't leave everyone out because everyone have the same type of problems. So, and Front National also made that statement that we include all people of European descent to be included, and that's not including the colored people. They also have some sort of European descent. It's a nation on their own currently, so I just want to clarify that.
Yes. No, I agree with you, Francois, but the hardcore Afrikaners seem to think that they can do it on their own. But you can't. You're already such a small minority to exclude any white person. Because look, when they come to murder you, they don't ask you what language do you speak.
No, they don't. No, they do not. No. They won't even ask you if you're Afrikaner, English, Boer, Portuguese. They see you as a white skin and they will murder you just for your white skin.
Absolutely, Francois. And now, this is the thing we have not spoken about on any of the programs leading up to this one. But I would like you to address the absolute escalating black on white murder rate in South Africa. Because I read today with absolute horror that in 30 days there have been 29 farm murders in South Africa. And that is only the farmers. That is not the urban murders, which have escalated. I mean, every day I see 4 or 5 attacks and murders. It is the most horrific thing.
Yes, there's a Facebook page called the Boer Crisis Actie. We have affiliation with them as well. That is official affiliation. So, and every day they report on all the murders in South Africa, the white murders here in South Africa, and the urban ones are starting to rise more and more. But the only one that we can measure against statistics is the farm murders at the moment, because most of the farmers in South Africa is white people. So it's the more precise case of numbers that we can say there is a genocide against white people, because just like you mentioned, in the last 30 days, 29 farm murders was there, and the farming community is just a small number of people here in South Africa. So 29 people is a lot of people to lose in a month. And the actual murder rate, if I remember now correctly from yesterday, they said it was 96 out of 100,000 people, and the average murder rate in the world is just 6.8 for every 100,000 people. So it's 12 times more than what the international rate is. So that's the precise number of people that's murdered in South Africa. It's a lot more than what the norm is in the world. So currently there's a brutal attack against the white people here in South Africa, and the rate is escalating by the day. So we have to implement more and more security measures, and it costs a lot of money. And at the current moment, the people is suffering here in South Africa because of the economic problems that we do have in South Africa and around the world that have implications towards our South African economy as well.
Absolutely. Francois, I just want to do a station check and I will be back with you. This is Radio Free South Africa coming to you on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio B. And I would like to make an appeal to our listeners, please. After every show, I get emails from people that tell me that they would love to help the destitute, dispossessed white South Africans, but they either do not know how or lack the means to do anything significant. Well, this is how anyone can contribute to saving white lives and bringing them to freedom. The cost of getting one white South African out of that hellhole and bringing them to the USA is $3,000. Not a lot of money to save a life, but definitely not an amount that most of us can give at one time. However, every single one of us can give $10 or $20 to this literally life or death cause. So please think of the satisfaction of knowing that you helped to save a life and donate the best amount you can afford to our PayPal account. That is cooks595@yahoo.com. Charlie, Oscar, Kilo, Sugar, 595@yahoo.com. You will be glad that you did. And now we're back. Radio Free South Africa with your host, Karin Smith. Our guest today is Francois Klutter from Front National. Francois, so things in South Africa are really, really, really bad. And the mainstream media says not one word about it. You don't get any information out of South Africa in the outside world. So it's very hard for people like myself to be the voice and to try and wake the world up. How is it? I've also noticed that there was only one newspaper article about your march on Friday. How difficult is it then for you as Front National to reach the general public and get the numbers that you need?
Yeah, luckily for us, two papers, actually extra one was also there that I didn't notice completely. Just afterwards, the march approached me, so we got two papers, and actually it's English papers, so even the Afrikaans papers is boycotting the type of protest that we have in South Africa. So even Afrikaans media, the more liberal Afrikaans media, turn their backs on their own people now. So that's the type of problem that we also have, the liberal element in our people that believes that New South Africa is the perfect paradise, but actually are living in a doomsday of hell here at the moment, because the picture that they portray for the world to see is the most beautiful country in the world and the most democratic country in the world, but actually behind the curtains, more and more people are just being murdered just because he's different from someone else. So yeah, so that's the picture. That's the same one, and luckily for the US, the picture is starting to change. They can see that it's starting to become a race problem, and I really want to state that for the world that can see that South Africa also have this race problem, but not the one that they portray usually. If like for my instance myself, if I go and murder a black man, it will be in the front papers all around South Africa and probably in one of two papers around the world. But if a black man kills a white man in South Africa, it do not get reported here in South Africa at all, and not even the world will ever know. So that's the problem that we have with the media. But luckily enough, Front National is making the message so hard that they cannot miss it at all. So that's why we started to make progress in the media. So there was a lot of support that we got from the last few days from the communities here in South Africa that see that we really try to do something for them, and even from the international media even started to contact us. So the picture is starting to change, so but not at the fast pace that I like to have at the current moment.
Absolutely, Francois. We need some really, really quick action here because, as we have just said, the murder rate is getting worse by the day. I'm horrified. I don't even want to turn on my PC in the morning because the numbers are just so enormous and so frightening, and the way that they are killing these people is getting, if possible, even more barbaric. I mean, I didn't think it could get worse than it has been in the past years, but it's just getting worse and worse by the day. You couldn't think that people could find a more demonic, cruel way of killing people, but they seem to find one all the time.
Yes, and of course, and the problem is that it's starting to get so everyday situation that even myself have to sometimes just to reset myself and say it's because the practice is getting so normal that you even do not get sad anymore because you said, yeah, tomorrow someone will be killed again. So you have to reset yourself and let the emotions just run out again, that you can say, yes, it's one more life that I'm losing, and not getting it to be a normal activity at a day that you see that as normal. So that's the problem. That's how fast the people is getting murdered in South Africa. It's starting to get normal for the people around them that they will probably lose a life again tomorrow. So see, that's how bad it is, that it's starting to get a norm, and that's the problem.
Absolutely. And so you're desensitized to the horror around you, because if you were to allow yourself to feel, Francois, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, of course. And every day you have to stand out in this country just for not knowing what will happen around the corner. I will probably just get murdered for my cell phone, and that's the problem. He cannot drive there, or he will be mugged around at the street corner at the robot. So, see, that's how the situation. You don't even want to know what will happen today to you. And where in some civilized countries, you can drive from your house to your work, and you will know that the chance of getting mugged or getting killed is less than 0.0001%. But in South Africa, it's more than 50%. So that average, I cannot live in that situation, in these conditions at all.
No, the fear that one lives with in South Africa is something that creeps up on you, and then it becomes the norm that you don't even notice how scared you are all the time. Your eyes are on a swivel, you're looking all sides of you, looking behind you, you're listening for the slightest sound. It is the most terrible, terrible way for people to have to live, and yet it's the norm. We just do it and carry on day by day and never think about it. So I don't know if even you can answer this question, Francois. How is it possible that there are so many white South Africans that refuse to see what is right in front of them? They do not acknowledge these murders. They do not acknowledge the bad situation. They will not acknowledge the fear. How is that possible?
I think they've been brainwashed through years of propaganda. I think that's the only thing that I can think of. They've been so brainwashed that they only see it as crime and not as a genocidal attempt from a certain group towards the other one. So that's the only thing that I can see, that this is a brainwashed propaganda of an order around the world that probably set it out towards them, and they succeeded in that. So, but we're starting to try to brainwash them again backwards. That they said you have to open your eyes and start seeing for what is really happening in South Africa. But there's a lot of people that is seeing what is happening, but they feel helpless towards themselves and say, how can I do anything? What can I do? The government won't listen to me. No one wants to listen to me. I do not have enough money to immigrate to other parts of the world just to be safe. So they see it, but they feel helpless and useless for themselves. And that's an attitude problem as well. So I think the brainwash propaganda and the attitude problem that we have, that's the blindness that we're currently facing here in South Africa, that the people have a no-care meaning of life now at the moment because they are feeling devastated just regarding the situation in South Africa. And that's the main problem that we have. We're starting to feel just useless human beings inside the boundary that we cannot get out of.
Yeah. Given the number of white South Africans living in the camps, I kind of understand that because something between 20 and 33% of white South Africans are condemned to the squatter camps because of the racist laws, because of their inability to get a job. And that leaves about 2/3 of the population, of which a huge number are elderly or kids. So that small part of the population now has to support the ones who are in the camps. And that just makes the whole picture even worse.
Yeah, because if I can explain to the listeners what a squatter camp is, it's a trailer park, but 10 times worse how a trailer park looks in America, where the low class citizens usually live. So it's 10 times worse. It's usually made of carton boxes and so on. That's what the squatter camp looks like. And there's no probably usually there's no water supply or uh, uh, sanitation supply chain over there. So it's the baddest conditions that you can live in, and that usually these people do not even receive 1 rand per day. That is like 10 cents in America.
Yeah.
So that's the economic side of it, what the squatter camp looks like, and then 20% of our population is living in these types of conditions. So it's just getting more worse by the day that more and more people is losing their jobs and find themselves in this situation and have to move to these types of camps. So, and the health conditions in these camps is, I can't even explain to you. There's diseases out there I didn't even know that exist around in the world. So that's the type of situation that we're also facing here. It is not our economic and political situation, but we also have a welfare situation that the government is turning a blind eye towards and the international community like UNICEF. They do not even want to look to this side of the problem, but they can give bread and water to people in North Africa that have better living conditions than these types of people.
Yeah, absolutely, Francois. For me, I cannot understand. Americans that I have come in contact with are the kindest, warmest hearted, most sympathetic people who would help if they were aware of the situation there. But nobody is telling them. And so when you do tell them, it is such a shock to their systems that they can't believe it. They don't want to believe that this can be happening in a first world, incredibly wonderful country like South Africa. And yet, on everybody's doorstep is a squatter camp, either black or white, where people are living in subhuman conditions. For me, how come the world is not looking?
Even a war zone looks better than these types of squatter camps, in my personal opinion. But if the Americans do visit South Africa, I will personally take them to one of these squatter camps. They won't believe what they see with their eyes. And these type of, and the people living there is some of the kindest people as well. So, but they are so caught up in this situation that they cannot get out of it. And I think probably if you don't get a new country, they will probably never see the outside of a squatter camp again. So that's the biggest problem that we have currently in this. And me myself, that I have a bit of a better economic situation for myself, that I can look after myself and secure myself with security systems and so on. But I can't provide for these people. It's just the welfare state is just too much to handle, and most of the white South Africans can't look after these people. There is NGOs and non-profit companies out there that try to help these people, but the money is not enough. And if we do not get outside help, we will never feed these people actually, and give them just better medical conditions to just for tomorrow. But the problem is we have to give people work, and they cannot depend on welfare the whole time. So we have to get them work and working again for money. So that's a better solution to the problem. But currently we cannot employ them because there's no jobs for these people in this country. We have to get our own country again that they can employ them for the skills that they have, like a electricity supply company or a municipality that I can give them jobs where their special skills is needed. So that's the thing. If the United States is a part of the Security Council, permanent member of the Security Council, if they can support us in self-determination, I'm halfway to my independence.
Absolutely, Francois, because the people in these camps are not people that were born to it. They're not lazy. Well, there are some, but they are not lazy people who want to be there. These are skilled white workers. These are people with degrees. These are engineers and lawyers and all kinds of really skilled people who were laid off of their jobs simply because they are white. And now they will never get a job. So a whole generation of children is now condemned to no education, no help, ill health, not learning hygiene and whatever, because it's impossible in those conditions. And this is a whole repeat of the British concentration camps where they wiped out 20% of the Afrikaner population. It's happening again, and yet again, the world is not looking at it.
Yeah, we don't have an Evelyn House this time around, and if we just can get a person like that, like in the work concentration camps back then the world will probably see more and more because now everyone is turning a blind eye. If we get international journalists, yeah, we're going to take them to these slaughter camps. I cannot believe that people living in these conditions. I think all white Americans rich people, or I can't believe that white can like that. So that's the thing. No one believes us. We talk about it even on the radio. It's not possible. That's why I mean, if some Americans do have the money to come to South Africa, cheaper, I will personally take to one of these photo and see for himself. We are not lying about our situation.
Absolutely, but when an American or any other person goes to South Africa, they go will be tourist trails, which avoid these places. So when they come back, they had a wonderful holiday in South Africa because their money is worth a fortune there. They've gone to the most tourist attraction, safest places, and they come back saying, well, there's nothing wrong there. But Francois, I get so frustrated. They also don't want to see it. And it's hidden from them when they go there. Anyway.
Yes, yeah, that's the problem. Now that they take it to as a tourist, guys take the people to attractions like the Freedom Museum here in Pretoria that was for a liberation struggle, but they do not take them to the Voortrekker Monument or the Paul Kruger Statue just to see our heritage from where we came from, also from a very, very poor background. That our forefathers left their farms in the Cape Colony just to move upwards to be independent from the British Crown, and they have nothing, and they built up Transvaal and the Free State and all the other areas in South Africa that was once the Afrikaner ground or European ground. So they built it up themselves, and now we are living in substandard society that is ruled by other people and not ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely, Francois, because we had we had the best country in Africa. We had the finest first world country in Africa until 1992. And then the destruction has just been allowed to run rampant. I mean, there's no attempt to maintain anything, never mind the electricity and water, the roads, nothing is being maintained in South Africa. So you will be worse than a third world country given another year or two.
Even Nigeria is a better place to live. Even Ghana and Namibia is a better place to live than South Africa at the current moment.
Absolutely. And now the whole world knows about the Zimbabwean currency, where they have $3 trillion bills with an expiry date on it. And even Zimbabwe is refusing to take the South African rand right now. They say it's worthless. So if your money is more worthless than Zimbabwean dollars, what hope is there for South Africa?
Yeah, because we're currently paying 13 rand just for $1 American. So, and I'm probably that's the last time I look. I don't even look anymore at the exchange rate because it's getting worse and worse by the minute. So our import that we have to do is getting more expensive. So yeah, yeah, it's a frustration because the country's been run down into the gutter by useless fools. That's the thing.
That are stealing and committing fraud at such a rate of knots. I saw a number for the fraud in South Africa the other day that I just cannot wrap my head around. There is so much taxpayer money being literally siphoned off into black pockets, and yet their own people who keep voting for them, who think the ANC is the answer to everything, do not seem to understand that the ANC is stealing from them every day.
Mm.
Billions that
Mm.
the country just doesn't have.
Okay, but I have to tell the listeners out there, the ANC is the master manipulators of a population. I must tell you, every election, time and time again, they tell them, we know there's corruption problems, but remember, we liberated you from the white people. So please vote. Otherwise, the Boer will be back in charge, or the white man will be back in charge. So they're the master manipulators, and that's why they can get away with murder and corruption and everything. So that's the thing I must give credit to the ANC. They're master manipulators.
Mm. But they have a lot of money behind them and years and years and years of experience at this game, where the Afrikaner has always been so busy living and defending his living space that he's never learnt this media attack or that kind of thing. And I think that is where we have been failing. We have never had the media coverage or the voice to stand up for us and plead our cause. And that is why I'm so grateful for people like Front National who are finally standing up and saying, enough. White people are being murdered in their thousands. We don't have a number of how many whites have been murdered. I see 85,000, I see 1 million, I see all kinds of figures, but we really don't know how many have been murdered.
Yeah, because the South African police is giving out a statistic for the whole population of South Africa, not for certain, not per race group. So we have no idea how many is being killed every day. The only way of means that we can use is the farmers, because 90% of all farmers in South Africa is white. So that's the only norm of way of we probably be exact sure that how many people is been killed for a white skin is by the farmers. And that's the only one that we can use at the government.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B. This is your host, Karin Smith, and our guest today is Francois Klutter, Treasurer and International Media Person for Front National, an up-and-coming political party in South Africa. So, Francois, we were talking about the fact that they're using the farm murders is the only way to actually quantify white murders in South Africa. But the farm murders are only the tip of the iceberg, because for every one farm murder, there are at least 3 or 4 other white murders.
Yeah, precisely, and that's the problem that I have with the South African statistical system, but it's a rather smart move from the government, and then they can't be in trouble for genocide, so there's no actual statistical means of way of proving our genocidal claim, but the only way that they can use, like I said before, is the farmers, but it's only a small fraction of the real murders happening here towards the white people.
Absolutely. So we talk about a genocide, Francois, which people tend to see as thousands of bodies lying in the streets and uncontrollable murder. But the genocide of a nation is the destruction of their heritage, their monuments, their history, their language. Can you address how that is happening, mainly against the Afrikaner in South Africa?
Yeah, because genocide is a rather broad term that it can happen in a slow pace or a rather fast pace, but usually people see that as a fast pace, like in Rwanda in the 1980s, so where 800,000 people lose their lives. But here in South Africa, it's the slow way of doing it because they're trying to destroy our cultural system that we have. Like, for instance, earlier this year, just we as a bunch of Afrikaners and white people have to go and protect our statues that was uh, placed up here in the early days for our heroes, and now we have to protect them every day. Just let them not be destroyed by these Marxist, communist, like colonialist people that we have here in South Africa that they cannot destroy these types of monuments of us. So and now they're being making their way to our universities. And the last month we have a lot of crisis at our universities because of black students began to revolt at the universities regarding fees that they have to pay. They say it's a colonial system that they don't have to pay any university fees to go to universities. So we are now at the crisis point that even now Afrikaans is the only modern language that was created here in the African continent, and it's the youngest language that could have the status of being an academic language. The fastest language that ever could have been academic language in the world. It's a record that we still have with one of our native languages that we speak here. But for that, now the perpetrators is targeting this language now of us that it cannot be taught at our universities. So we're starting to lose the Afrikaans universities that we have here in South Africa. So to these Marxist revolutionists that we have here in South Africa.
But Francois, as you said, Afrikaans is the youngest language ever accepted as an actual language in the history of the world. Now, Afrikaans is a totally African language. It was devised, it was begun, it is only spoken in South Africa. And the blacks, when the whites got there, had no written language whatsoever. And even to this day, they do not have words in their language for the technology, for the scientific terms, for anything. So they want to be taught in their own languages, which do not have textbooks, which do not have words for the things that they're being taught. Do they not see how impossible this is?
Yes, of course, and now they use English as the medium language for all education in South Africa. But they are standing up against Afrikaans. They say it's a colonial language, but the hypocrisy regarding this is that English is the most colonial language out there. So the irony in that I cannot understand the ways of thinking. They want to implement English that so yeah.
Well, colonial, and of course, Afrikaans was developed as a South African language. It didn't come from any colonialists. It did not come from the Netherlands or from any. It is as African a language as Zulu or any of the other 11 acceptable South African languages. So they are literally kept by your heritage, your culture, and your land. So even if we can't get numbers of South Africa, those things under international rules and sorry?
You're breaking up at the moment. I cannot hear anything.
Okay, I'm going to call you back because you're also breaking up, Francois. Just hold on 1 second. I'll call you back. Excuse me, listeners. I'm really sorry about that, but I feel fortunate every single week to get a South African on the program at all because it is so difficult for them. They have no electricity. They have the worst internet in the world. So for me to be able to get any of them live is an enormous, enormous good thing. So if you'll just give us a moment, we'll ring him back and try and get his voice clear. Francois, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, good. Okay. So what I was saying is that essentially, the genocide of your heritage, your language, your culture, etc., qualifies under any international rule as genocide. So even if we don't have numbers on the deaths, and we can't say, okay, this is exactly how many white people have been killed, we can still, by all rules, use the destruction of your heritage and language as genocide. So why is it that we are not doing that?
Yeah, the problem is that the international community do not see that cultural heritage that's been destroyed as genocide. And we still have to enlighten them that genocide is a broader term than just mass murder. So the thing is that some of the UN officials do regard it as genocide, but it's a process of getting that claim to the international court and the supplying of evidence over all these years. That it's not a new case. It started from 1994 and not from yesterday. So that's the thing, and we are starting to gather all the information that is necessary to supply them with all the necessary facts that we don't regarding the statue destruction, the university's destruction, and our monument destruction and language destruction, and all these types of destructions that we have regarding our heritage and history, that we can prove it, and that we can some way prove our statistical murders towards our people from other groups, that we can prove it. But the current, okay, that one is a bit difficult to prove, but that's also a struggle that we will overcome.
I'm sure you will, Francois, because there were people keeping account of everyone that they could verify. I mean, I have got 650 single space typed pages of the names, the date, and the way they were murdered. So we do have some backup for what we're saying, but it is impossible for any one person to keep track of all of this because somebody could, like in my father's case, you are wounded in an attack and sometime later you die as a direct result of that attack. But your death is listed as from natural causes and you never hit any list. And so it is, the ANC government is making it almost impossible to quantify anything.
Yeah, and some of these dockets of the murders that took place, it disappeared from the records and archives. So that's the other problem that we have. We have the murder time, date, place, and the way. But if you go and look up the docket, then the docket is gone. So the docket is disappearing sometimes. So you can't even go back to the South African archives to go and collect it from the police department. So that's the other problem that we are facing regarding this. So, and some of these dockets are never opened. So a murder took place, but the docket is never opened.
Yes, because the police say, well, if you can't identify your attacker by name, then we can't help you, and they do nothing.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem they have, because the police is not like other police forces around the world that you, regarding who have attacked you, or a docket should be opened because then it should be investigated by your oh, sorry. Yeah, it have to be investigated by a police officer. So, and the problem is that we have a lack of understanding how the police force should work, and that's the biggest problem we have. We have a lack of skill, and because most of our police officers left the force of 1994 because of the incompetency and cannot get promoted anymore in the police force. So they went into the security or in other types of industries just to survive. So we're losing a lot of skilled people that could have protected us, but because of a system, like I told earlier in the program, of black economic empowerment and affirmative action and the quota system, so we're losing a lot of skilled people in a lot of industries that could have made this country just a bit more stable than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely, Francois. Because I've seen people that have gone into police stations to open a case, and they've been sent to another police station and sent until they just gave up. Then I read this morning that an entire file cabinet full of police dockets was found dumped in a ditch in South Africa, and the figures of those who are actually brought to justice is something like 14%. So the rest of the world considers it's the police's duty to investigate a crime and to find out who did it. It is not your duty to tell the police that Solomon from the house next door came and attacked me. It's the police's duty to go and investigate and find out who attacked you, but not in South Africa.
Yeah, and the scary part is that any person would rather call their security company to come and protect them than the police, because the police will probably, if we call them, they probably will only arrive 3 hours later, if they arrive, actually. But that we rather rely on security companies to protect us than our own police force. It shouldn't be like that in any country. And even looking now at Britain now, it's starting that security companies is also now starting popping up everywhere. So everywhere in white Western civilizations, the same problem is starting to happen. What's happening in South Africa, that we have to look out to our private security systems just to protect us now.
Yes, and the problem is that because of affirmative action in South Africa, most people cannot even afford that. So there is nobody, absolutely nobody, to protect you, because a lot of your firearms have been confiscated. Those who are fortunate enough to still have firearms, if you fire on somebody who has attacked you or has broken into your house, you are the one who gets arrested, not the black person.
Yes, because if he enters my house and he started shooting at me, but I kill him with a baseball bat or with my pistol, then I will get charged for murder. Then not him. That if he still do live, he's not actually charged for attempted murder. I'm charged then for attempted murder. It's the irony of the whole case that you try to protect yourself, then you go to jail for something you didn't do. Actually, it wasn't your motive to go and kill that person. You just try to save your life and your family's life. So that's the problem that we are facing. And like you said, not every household in South Africa can afford a reaction security company just to protect themselves. Like myself, I do not have a security company looking after myself. I have to implement my own gate system and just to protect myself with walls that is higher than most football poles like you have in America.
Yeah, you live behind 8-foot walls with barbed wire or electronic wire on the top. You have electronic gates. You have security gates. You have alarm systems. You have burglar bars on every window. You have a security gate closing off the sleeping area from the rest of the house. And you are still not safe.
No, because the perpetrators always finds a way to come into your secure system. But the problem is that we should not be living in these types of standards. Like myself, I didn't know the system before, but what I heard is that if you went into the streets in the 1970s, you wouldn't have been killed just for walking on the street. And now I cannot walk at night on the street because probably there will someone be behind a bush and just kill me for the fun of it.
Oh, absolutely, Francois. You know, Hillbrow is one of the most dangerous areas in South Africa. Well, in in the early 70s, I lived in Hillbrow and I worked in a hotel there. And I used to walk to work and back every night without giving a second thought to my safety. I never had to consider that that was a dangerous thing to do. Now, today, you don't even enter Hillbrow, never mind at night.
Yes, yeah, of course. And I live in one of the most safest white regions that there still is in Pretoria. And actually, I cannot go at night and walk without some sort of a weapon in my hand, just if I want to go and do my exercise in the street. So when I'm running or speed walking. So yeah, always have something on you just to protect yourself, pepper spray or something, where you don't know what you're gonna get on the street. So yeah, and then some types of other areas that is more where the crime is much more than where I'm currently living. So that those types of areas is big problems. You cannot leave even your house. You have to drive with your car outside your gate just to protect yourself with the car's body.
Yeah, and that's not safe. I don't think that anywhere in the world would they understand how the white South Africans are forced into a siege mentality, and they're not in a state of war. They are living in a peaceful country. How, the world cannot wrap their minds around this. And unless you are a South African who has lived in that way, you wouldn't understand it either, Francois.
Yes, yeah. If I was in any country's uh, shoes, I wouldn't have believed what I'm talking tonight. So yeah, that's the problem. They cannot see that we can live in such conditions because we are. The Proteas is a very civilized country, but we actually in a very criminal-like country actually because your safety isn't secure, your economic conditions isn't secure, your political conditions isn't secure at all either. So, and then you get guys like Julius Malema that says, kill the farmer, kill the boer, and one bullet, one settler. So then the actual genocidal uh, chants that he's shouting to his supporters, it makes it much more and more personal.
Absolutely. That was the next subject I was going to come up to. So who is this Julius Malema that the world doesn't know about? They're learning this week. We'll go to that next. But who is he? Where did he come from? What is he?
Julius Malema is a former leader of the ANC, and he was for years starting a lot of anti-white sentiments towards it and says we are the white, South Africa is a white supremacy place, and Africa is still a white capitalist place, and the world is funding the white people to demoralize the African people. And now, after the ANC kicked him out of his own party regarding some of his statements towards his leaders, not for not doing the chance that he told his supporters, he started a new party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, that he's the leader of now. And actually, it's the third biggest party now in South Africa, and it's really the most communist, Marxist, Leninism party that we can have on this global place of ours. It's more revolutionary than Cuba itself and the old USSR of Russia. So he's more communist than both these places together. So that's how his beliefs are, and he believes that white people is the problem that the country is facing now, and that is not the way that I see it. I think it's his incompetencies and his friends' incompetencies that we are sitting in the problem that we currently have now, and his hatred towards us is just escalating the genocidal against our people, because he was the biggest perpetrator regarding the university that was an outrage, and even the monument attacks that was vandalized in the beginning of the year. He said it was his people that vandalized our monuments and statues.
So the ANC thought when they expelled him from the party that was the end of him. He was gone. There were no more problem.
Yeah.
And I think that white South Africans also took a deep sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Said, well, if anything could be worse than President Zuma, that's him, and he's gone now. And yet he came back stronger than ever. And
the problem is his support is started to grow more and more every day, because he's now starting to, his main support base is young people, and now he's starting to get the older generation of black people support as well. Now we're starting to get a problem that it's a broad base of support that they have regarding all generations now. So and the biggest problem is that even the women is starting to support him now. So that can be escalated into a big problem in the next 10 years if we're still here. So that he can probably become the next president of South Africa.
Yes, an American friend of mine said that he's a Mugabe in waiting, because he will be young when he takes over South Africa and then make himself president for life. And that's the end. I mean, Zimbabwe is going to be a party, towards what South Africa will become. Because not only, you mentioned Cuba, but he is a great friend of the Cubans. He's been to visit there. He's learned from them. He went to study their ways. He is a huge follower of Robert Mugabe and believes that Mugabe was not harsh enough on the whites that lived in Zimbabwe. So if he were to come to power, which is not impossible, because he and his party were instrumental in getting rid of President Mbeki and putting Zuma in power. Now, his power has only grown since then. As you say, the disaffected black youth see him as a hero. So it is not impossible that he becomes president of South Africa, in which case, where do the whites stand? Because he's made it perfectly clear, one settler, one bullet.
And actually, now he's stating in England as well, we have been visiting them in this week, that white supremacy is the biggest problem of the world, and that we are a bunch of rubbish that is walking on earth. So that's his sentiments. He actually have a big hatred towards white people, but he still wants to have the fancy cars that the white people created and the fancy cell phones. So the biggest irony on that is that he still wants the white man's things, but he do not like the white man. So he's the biggest fool of them all. But actually, when we actually asked him to come and dialogue to us and say it straight into my face when he says one settler, one bullet, but he's still too scared to do it.
Wow, so he said that directly to you, one settler, one bullet.
Yeah, actually, when I was on campus, when he was still the ANC Youth League leader, he stated it once to me.
My goodness. And the man is not quiet about his intentions towards the whites at all. And yet his support base failed to see all the cases of fraud against him, all the cases of corruption, all the cases of theft. They don't seem to see that as a drawback in a political person. They see him as an absolute hero. And yet he wears on his wrist a watch that is worth more than most white or black South Africans will earn in a lifetime.
Yes, yeah, and actually he's giving Nelson Mandela now the blame that he's still that he was protecting the white interest, and now that type of statements is getting the black youth more and more revolutionist. And that they can revolt even more in this country. So he's just chanting the right things at the right time. So that's the biggest problem that we have. And I think the problem will get even more worse. I cannot see what will happen at the universities next year, because they protested that there wouldn't be a fee increase for the next year, and their next target is to get free education. So he actually stated 2 years ago that he will implement free education for all. So he will be the forefront leader probably for that movement as well.
But he has been involved in it, has he not?
Yeah, he was, but actually through his sentiments that it escalated through to other movements as well.
Yes, because the students were rioting and burning and looting and murdering because of a fee increase. So when President Zuma came out and said there will be no fee increase, people expected that those riots would now die down, the kids would go back to university, write their exams, and everything would be fine. So he told them on a Friday that there would be no fee increase. And they said that they are going to continue rioting and will not write exams and will close the universities down because now they want totally free education. But Francois, in no country is anything free. Somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah, we're starting to move with that types of sentiments. We are starting to move to a communist state that the state is going to control everything. So we are just a communist country in waiting. That types of sentiments, we will turn into a communist country like Cuba and the old USSR and the old People's Republic of China. So we are just a communist country in waiting. With those types of sentiments, we are just waiting to be a communist country.
Well, he has also stated categorically that everything needs to be nationalized. His latest one is he's going to attack the banks, starting with ABSA, which is basically Barclays Bank. So he has stated that quite straight out. And he's going to nationalize banks, building societies, all land in South Africa, which Zuma is behind as well. Because in their last meeting of the ANC, they did discuss at length the nationalization of all land, not just farmland. So he is just Zuma on steroids, actually. And
yes, of course.
He appears to know nothing from Zimbabwe.
And see that we have the whole point is that Zimbabwe is the perfect example for what nationalization brought them, and now we want to implement it here, and I think they can implement it better. So I cannot foresee that it will work. And the other things that Julius Malema is targeting ABSA now, that is the old Volkskas Bank and the Trust Bank, is all of them were started by Afrikaners, as old Afrikaner institutions. So he's targeting the old Afrikaner institutions now. So starting with them and then proclamating to the other banks now. And he was also, like you said, targeting farmland, that it should be nationalized completely because land reform system isn't working at a fast enough pace.
But Francois, my thing is, I have researched this whole land thing very carefully, and I see that the land in South Africa, they say 80% of it belongs to the whites, which is A, not true. But B, we need to look at how much land in South Africa is arable. It's desert, it's the Karoo, it has no rainfall. So there is a very small percentage of really worthwhile land in South Africa. And how much land does the government own? Because more than 50% of the land in South Africa is owned by the government. So should this land redistribution not start with them?
Yes, of course, because it cannot take the white man's land and redistribute it to the black man's land. I mean, government has enough land, farming land to give away, of agricultural land rather, to give away to these poor, unfortunate people that they tell us about all the time. So they can give it to them and starting programs there, but they want to take the white man's farm because it's already developed. So it's just taking it over and destroying it further. So, and the other thing is that land reform, they haven't worked in the last 20 years, and it should not be, and it will not work even in the next 20 years because of the problem of implementation of the program because of lack of skills in that area as well.
Well, I don't see how anyone could be skilled in that area unless you're a total crook. Because
Yeah.
if you have a white farmer whose farm has been in his family for 200, 300 years, and all you have to do is get some black person who comes and says, well, my family grazed goats on that property 301 years ago, so it's mine. And the government automatically hands it over. You don't need much skill to do that, do you?
No, you don't. And actually, what you said it was the in the beginning, but now you can, if you just have a grave there of your grandfather now, like 100 years ago, you can claim back that land because they can tell you that you stole it from his forefathers. That's actually how ridiculous it is now.
And yet, his family worked with your family on that land. And yes, his grandfather was buried on the farm because that's where he lived and worked under a white owner. And yet he has more claim to that land than you, who has a title certificate, who can prove how long it's been in your family. The whole thing is just total fraud and corruption. It's sick. And that leads me into asking you about this Pretoria story. You want to claim Pretoria, parts of Pretoria, as a white municipality. But there is that enormous, enormous claim on Pretoria and all its outskirts by some black tribe. And although the leader of the tribe was proved to be a fraud, the claim is still going forward.
Yeah, and actually there is counterparties towards that claim because there is no actual claim regarding it because there is no facts to be proven. There is not even any historical fact regarding that. So, and the thing is, if we should win these constituencies next year, I will definitely, if that should a decision made by a court that is that this tribe will get this type of land, I will address my people not to leave their houses at all.
Francois, that's the problem. You know, I discover this more and more, that compared to other European races, South Africans are very passive, law-abiding people who do not want to go against the law. They don't want to. They never have. And so to get a South African who's now been issued with an eviction notice because this house now belongs to somebody else, to get him to stand up and say, I'm not leaving, is going to be a very difficult task for you.
Yeah, no, of course. I will actually have to get the court order just to stop that court order. Actually, so just let the people could listen to me, to myself. So that's like you said, we are the most law-abiding citizens out there that they can have. Even the Europeans is more crooks than we are.
No, absolutely, Francois. You know, it astonishes me. Everybody asked me, and if you look at Facebook as an example, all these groups on Facebook supposedly for the white South Africans, the two of the most common comments you get there are as, well, you deserve it because you oppress the blacks. And the other one is, well, why don't you stand up and fight? Now, we've addressed some of that today in that our firearms were confiscated. And if you defend yourself, you will be in jail for murder. End of story. So those are reasons why we do not stand up and fight. But also because although the Afrikaner has a history of when pressed, he will fight to the death. And he will take 20 of you with him. They have that history, yes, but those were different times. The whole.
I think by myself, if the Afrikaners or a white man is pushed far enough, it will have the same type of power that we had at the Anglo-Boer War and the wars before that. So the blacks have to really push our button really hard, and I think then they will feel the wrath of the Boer power that it is out there.
But Francois, will that not be too late? Because
Yeah.
if 20% of your population is already living in such dire circumstances that they couldn't think of protection, all they can think about is their next meal, medical for their kids. How are they going to send their children to school because they are not being educated, because they cannot afford the transport, the books, the uniforms, the school fees? You are losing an entire generation of children to this. So how then are they going to stand up and be counted? I mean, it seems an impossible task to me.
I think by myself that I think the situation will lead itself to what will happen. I think we can say now that it will probably not, by these people, it will not happen. But I think if the situation pushes for itself, the result will come, and I still believe that. And I think just the belief that we still have, because we are Protestant Christians, and we have to believe that our Creator will look after ourselves eventually again. So we still have that belief that there will be a future for us. So I think that because of our religion, we still have that belief.
Well, an American friend of mine and myself, we have fastened on to the god of Blood River. The Boer god of Blood River is still on their side. Now, that's just two of us and our belief, but I really do believe that, because what was achieved at Blood River is basically what is needed to keep you alive now.
No, of course, and I believe that our beliefs still have to go back to Him, because we can scream to the world, but if our beliefs is not right, I will never succeed in anything that we do at Front National or any other organization in South Africa.
Yes, Francois, because you can see in the countries like the United States, where we have almost banished God from the country, you can see the direct result of that is the country degenerate, going backwards. And
even the result of this. So we have been taking care. But see that is not as a result because of what we allow to happen, because today the take of our religion in schools in our place.
Yeah, and push all these other ungodly things like bisexual, sexual marriage, and all of these things that do not belong in a godly society. And so, but they're also using that, Francois, in my opinion, they're using that to set people against each other. Because the more the infighting there is amongst yourselves, the weaker your group voice is. So I think that this New World Order that people talk about is using every opportunity to cause us to fight amongst ourselves so that we cannot present a strong front to the world.
No, of course, and that's the thing in South Africa as well. We argue about the silliest things among ourselves, just rather to focus on the enemy, but that is before us and destroying us currently. So, but luckily we're starting to overcome that problem, because in the last month we have made agreements with a lot of organizations to work together towards self-determination in South Africa as for the white people. So we are building a bridge over that problem that the New World Order set out there for us. So they have a big problem, because we are burning those bridges that we're starting to build bridges over that problems that they stated.
Yeah, absolutely, Francois. Now, that was another thing I wanted to speak to you about, is the huge strides that Front National has made in the last month or two behind the scenes of getting these other disparate groups that do not necessarily agree 100% with your ideas, but it is a big step for the white South Africans to have these groups joining hands and working together. It is an absolutely essential step. So how did you manage to do this?
Yeah, because we said we all have one common vision, and that's self-determination. How we get there is a problem for another day. But our main vision is self-determination. If we can agree on that one, we can work together. And on that basis, we got a lot of people, a lot of groups that said yes, we agree, and we have to start to stand together because we are such a small minority, and we cannot not agree on everything. We cannot agree on everything, but we have to agree that our plight is that we have to give freedom for our people and that we have to get in a self-determination state again. So that's on the basis of that we made most of these agreements.
Okay, so now, Francois, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. Given the history of South Africa and the influx of blacks into every white area throughout the history of South Africa, the blacks have always wanted to have their part of the success of a white area. Now, were you to be given self-determination in an area, do you not see South Africa history repeating itself in that you will not be allowed to have a successful, profitable, clean, functioning area without the blacks who have totally devastated their own areas now wanting to flock into your area once more?
I can, on that point, yes, yeah, because we see now a direct result of border control that is not properly implemented by the European countries at the moment and even the United States. So we can take that examples and just make border control much stricter that you can't get through as an illegal immigrant. You have to follow the ways of the process that we will stay there, and that will not be easy. So we have to learn from the other countries how they approach it and how they did not succeed in their approach, that we can create a system then that we can stop that influx. But I think the first problem is that we should first get this area, and then we can start border controlling our area then.
No, absolutely, Francois. But history has shown that no matter where or how the white South African has established a place that is safe for them, the blacks flow in by their thousands. Now, even closing your borders, we're going to come back to the old problem of the Dompas, aren't we? Because if you then give them a passport like they used to have to come into the white areas, history in that regard is going to repeat itself. Because even if you have self-determination, are you not then going to still be part of the South African government?
Yeah, the internal self-determination will still be under the South African Constitution, and on that note, we can just make us constituencies that we control the municipalities. We can make them safe because we will implement our own police force then. But when we get to an independent country, then we will not be like the same as the apartheid state. Our own people will work for our own services. So we will not use foreign imports to come and do our work. So we will only use European skill to develop, and the lowest worker will even be a white man. And we said, like, the guy that cleans the streets will be a white man. The guy that cleans the toilet will be a white man. Every job will be done by our own people and not from foreign imports.
Okay. Now, are you going to have the white people buy into that? Because for centuries, we have had the uneducated, unskilled black people doing those things. Are white people, and I'm not trying to throw you a curveball or to be difficult. It just seems to me that white South Africans consider those things demeaning. But the thing in your favor is, having been in a squatter camp, you will be prepared to sweep the streets in order to get out of those circumstances. Or am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, because we won't be a welfare state like the current South Africa is now. And we will be a capitalist state, and so you have to work for your money. So if you don't want to work, you can leave the country.
Wow. Wow, those are strong words, but a strong hand is definitely needed to lift white South Africans out of their dreadful circumstances. I can see a whole load of disrespect and nastiness coming from the rest of the world, because it is definitely going to be seen as a return to this dreaded, awful, horrible, oppressing the blacks apartheid. No matter how small your white country might be, they are going to see you as these awful people that we've been painted as for at least 50 years, because the world still sees white South Africans as the oppressor of the blacks.
Yeah. No, of course, they will actually see us that probably that way, but we have to go and tell them that we will not be implementing the same system what that was back then. So back then, the system was that we still have control over black lives and Karat lives and Indian lives here in South Africa, but what we propose is that we only have control over our own tribe and not the other tribes. So, so that's actually what the law also states in the international law, that you can only rule over your own tribe, and that's what we will implement, and that's only what we want. And I don't want to control any black in the future, because they have their own decisions to make. I can't make decisions for them. And actually, just to say to if any South African is listening, that in America and in Europe, white people is cleaning the toilet, so we can also clean the toilet.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest culture shocks if you leave South Africa, is that you have to do it all for yourself. And the garbage collection people are white, and the street sweeping people are white, and the truck drivers are white, which we're not used to in South Africa. But it's worked in the rest of the world, and I don't see why we can't do it ourselves. I mean, cleaning your house is your job. From my point of view, anyway. It's not a job for some stranger to come in and do.
But I think when the problem comes, we will make the necessary mind shifts. I don't think that will be a big problem.
No, because, Francois, people are seeing more and more that your black servant is actually your enemy, not your friend.
Yeah.
So,
and many of the white families is starting to get rid of the foreign workers in the houses, like the guy that work in your garden and the maid that is cleaning your place. So because they are the biggest criminal element or provocateur out there, because they let the criminal element into your house. So yeah, people starting to get rid of the workers inside the house and outside.
Yeah, so essentially this black base is not working so well for them, because the only job for the uneducated, unskilled is housework and garden work, and now they're being dispossessed of that. So the ANC is not just damaging the whites. They are doing incredible damage to their own people.
Yeah, precisely, and that's the thing. I think the mind shift will be much easier when we get into a self-determination state than 15 years ago, when we still in the new South Africa, we still have used the the black workers to do those types of jobs and not white people. So I think the mind shift will be much easier when we get to our own state.
Yes. So, Francois, we're into our last few minutes. I'd like you to give some websites where people who are interested can follow what Front National is doing, and possibly contribute and help, because your expenses are enormous, and there are not enough white people in South Africa to meet the demand for money.
No, of course not. And luckily for us, the exchange rate is so bad that we will like to have a few US dollars. That will help us a lot. So, but the people can go to www.frontnational. It's the Afrikaans spelling, because the Front National in France is currently using the English spelling, so we can't use that one. So, but it is www.front, like in front in English, and national, if I can spell it, is NASIONAL AAL.co.za. They can look up us on the website, and otherwise they can use the same spelling just for the Facebook pages that we have around that you can read up there, and it's always in Afrikaans and English, so the international readers will actually understand our message out there as well, because we have a lot of English people also living in South Africa, so we have to write for them both. So the people can look up out there, and otherwise they can Google what is happening in the news regarding Front National, because we are starting to get more and more in the news and what happened on Friday and Wednesday.
Absolutely, Francois. And I would tell my listeners that Front National has some incredibly good writers and speakers. One of their leaders, Daniel Lotter, is the most incredible writer. He can turn the most dramatic situation and end it with a laugh. And yet they are very serious people. Hopefully they get enough votes to get into politics next year and give a voice to the white people. And anyone out there listening that would like to have Front National on your program or to hear more about them, please let it be known that you can contact me with the greatest of pleasure, either Radio Free South Africa on Facebook or Cooks, COOKS 595 at yahoo.com. And I will be only too happy to put you in touch with them.